Hey guys! So, today's video was something that was in the tank for a little bit, and then I never really got around to it just because of a lot of things. I ended up covering other stuff. But seeing that you guys really enjoyed the look into the 25-year-old thinker, and essentially to sum up what that was it's just someone who's in their head a little bit too much. Like they spend too much time in their head, so they end up overemphasizing what's going on, and they end up filling in holes that's not really necessary. And so the advice for that video, generally speaking, was just go out and like learn, live and learn. That was kind of what it is. You have to try stuff before you can come to a conclusion, because your brain, it may have your best interest at heart, but at the same time it's not always right. That was the whole point of that video. And so today I actually wanted to look into the 25-year-old loner, or at least this archetype, just because one, this archetype is very particularly interesting because it's actually becoming a bit more common. As you know, like there's like loneliness spikes going on. We are ironically live in the most connected era, but we're actually the most distant from each other. So it's just it's fascinating all around, like the effects that it's had. So today I actually want to go over it because this is one I feel like a lot of people really resonate with a lot more than the other ones. So we're going to look at it today. And so just so we're on the same page, we're going to go and read generally what the archetype is. So it's going to be on screen for you here. And essentially it goes like this. Always wonders how their life could have turned out differently. People often ask why they are so quiet. Has friends but doesn't really feel fully part of a group. No best friends since primary school. Most people they like just seem to disappear eventually. Constant mental health and self-esteem issues. Never had a girlfriend. Has never given up their optimism, or a boyfriend in this case because it affects everybody. Can always sense most people don't really want to be talking to them when they are. Always feels out of place. Hobby skill they worked hard at but just not good enough to be professional. Seems normal to other people but always feels alone inside. Doesn't really care where their life is going anymore. Secret lifelong prawn addiction. Whew. So that was a bit of a mouthful, but as we can see here, this person has a lot going on. But as much as I read these, it seems like what I'm getting is that this is a lot of stuff that a lot of people deal with on the regular, but it just seems that in this particular archetype, this is much amplified even more. And because when someone's alone, you tend to be with your thoughts a lot of the time, and then you get all these conclusions where like you believe you're not worth it and this and that. But before we go into the archetype, or at least the ideas, I'm actually going to bring up some articles that I was reading, or at least a few of them. And so the common occurrence that I found across roughly, I'm gonna say 6 articles that I was reading when I was doing some bit of research for this was that a lot of the factors that contribute to loneliness, even if it's not the most well defined, what I saw was there was people who were, you know, it kind of the most common occurrence was like moving away to like a new place, having like a bad childhood or like terrible childhood, or external facts like that, poor like physical mental health. But the biggest thing of all was always like no sense of like community. That's what it really came across as. And that's just interesting because I'm going to like all these studies and I'm just like, okay, this is actually pretty interesting. And I'm going to post one of them actually for you to look at right here. This is one of them that I read, and it's just interesting how this one was in youths in London, and the idea of like they were feeling like disconnected and all that, and like culture, the pressure to catch up, all these factors. But my point is that a lot of people really resonate with this whole stuff, and I really want to look at it. So naturally, we have 2 concepts we're going to look at: the idea of failing to launch and shedding relationships. So, without further ado, let's go take a look into what those actually mean.
Psychiatry, we call this failure to launch. So that's like a term that we'll kind of use. So here's the pattern of someone who fails to launch. So what'll happen is you'll have someone who grows up and does pretty good, like in primary school, middle school. They don't fail out. They have some friends. They get invited to birthday parties. They pass their classes. You know, they kind of do okay. But then what happens is the later they go in life, the more the gap increases between them and other people. But there's not like a traumatic event, right? Because in society, like we're okay with that. We sort of are okay if like, oh, if you struggle in life and something bad happened to you, then it's not your fault. But what happens is there's an increasingly large a proportion of people who don't have anything to blame, really, except for themselves. right? It's not like I was horribly abused. It's not like I had some terrible accident. Just every year that goes by, I just kind of slip a little bit further and further behind.
Well, the syndrome is not an official diagnosis. It describes a young adult who is struggling with the transition to adulthood. And so, failing to launch, for this most part, means that like you never really took the step into adulthood like formally. And when we look at like what would society maybe describe as fail launching, I guess, is that perhaps you get your own place, you live in by yourself, you have a good job and all that stuff, and then eventually you go on to marry, have children, keep the family going, all that stuff. That's probably what people, or at least what society believes, is most part of launching. However, if you look at today, for instance, I mean, I don't have to repeat this, but it's been repeated over and over again. Food prices are going up, rent is getting ridiculous. I mean, look in your city and see what's like to rent a 1-bedroom apartment. Like, who's paying for this? And even if you can't afford it, you're probably going to need, like, I don't know, at least a roommate. And we know how fun roommates can be. Yahweh, beautiful girl. That's why. So what does this all like mean? Is that, generally speaking, we're not really told how to launch into adulthood. It kind of just happens. Or at least some people, they will literally just take a chance and it works out. Some people take a chance and it doesn't. But what does this kind of mean? So essentially, even if you're growing up good, no trauma, none of this stuff, it still takes a certain like caliber of like character and person to just finally, spread your wings. Mind you, spreading your wings now is even harder than it was before. But the whole point is that we have to realize that when people aren't like working towards something and they're kind of like stuck in the same place, you kind of end up, becoming like this, where you don't have any skills. You feel like you have no skills. You have nothing to be proud of. You have nothing to be like, no skills. And it's kind of like, think about it this way, right? You have to ask yourself, like, what are these people, what is you to be confident? Okay, so for example, maybe it's like you live with your parents. Like, okay, how am I going to show someone like I'm capable if I'm living with my parents? It shows I still need that support. And even if you have an apartment, you live in like the worst suburb in the city. So your own apartment is nothing to be confident in either. Or for instance, it's like you have a skill, I don't know, you like a painter. And it's like, hey, I can paint good, but I can never make it to like the painting academy or whatever skill it is. So that's kind of where this whole failure to launch is, because you never found the one thing that could get you to the stage that you wanted to get to. And it's a little bit like, it's sad to see, but it's just that like the barrier for entry for stuff is even higher than it was beforehand. And, in order to really stand out, you have to do something extraordinary. Well, what if I tell you that that's not necessarily the case? You don't have to be this extraordinary person to launch. You have to look at, well, what launching entails. So what does that mean exactly? So say, well, since we're using this analogy, you have a rocket that you have to build, you want to bring it to space. Well, the rocket doesn't take off one day. The rocket needs to know how much fuel it needs to get out. The rocket needs to know where it's going. The rocket needs to know what materials that it's made out of. The rocket also needs to have someone who's competent with like the make of the engine. You get the whole point? So you have to really look at it and be like, what are the components for me to get out of the situation that I'm in? And mind you, it may take you 1 year, it may take you 2, it may take you 5, but you get the point is that when it comes to getting yourself to the place you want to be, perhaps you should really look at yourself and be like, what can I do now? But we'll look at that later. But the idea is that I want you to keep in mind, whenever you're launching your own rocket, take into account all these factors. And by the way, there's always going to be stuff that's out of your control that you will never be able to do. But you gotta look at the stuff that you can control. Like I said, we will get into that later. So the whole idea, to sum it up, is that like failing to launch is just not getting to that step, not getting to that stage where it's like, what's the one I'm looking for? The caterpillar turning to the butterfly, per se. You didn't spread your wings yet. But don't feel bad too much though. There's a lot of stuff that's messed up out in the world right now. However, you can't blame the world, but you can always adjust. But anyways, that's failing to launch.
5-year-old loner sheds relationships, right? Like over time, it's not like they drive people away. They don't rupture things. They don't cause problems. They're not drama kings or queens. Just over time, people start to slough off. And why is that? What's going on? And what I started to realize is there are all kinds of things which these people were never taught. So, for example, I want you all to think about this, okay? When you were growing up, when you were 7 years old, how did you learn the rules of making friends? Did your parents make sure you got invited to birthday parties? When you had a birthday party, did your parents invite kids over? When you went to a birthday party, did your parents pick out a gift for the person that you were, did they do all the work? Did they pick out the gift and they wrote the card and just handed it to the other parent? Or were you involved in that process? Were you taught, okay, let's go get a gift for someone. When we get a gift for someone, let's write a card. I'm going to hand you the present and the card, and you're going to go in, and I realize you're going to feel a little bit awkward. You're going to go to your friend, and you're going to hand it to them.
That was a lot to take in. But essentially, think of it like this, okay? There are some plants out there that need a lot of care and are very specific, like a bonsai, for instance. Like that plant, let me tell you, that plant it needs a specific environment. It needs to have a specific guy to take care of it. All that fun stuff, okay? And now, there are some plants, like a spider plant. Let me tell you, if you want to kill a spider plant, good luck. Them plants are so hard to kill. But you have to treat, like, every person, not treat them like they're plants, but you have to, like, look at them in the way that it's like, okay, this person is a bit more, needs to hang out with them a bit more, they need a bit more attention, this person's a bit more self-sufficient, all this stuff. But we're not really taught how to maintain every single relationship, like he was said. Because sometimes you might make friends growing up, but then you don't give the relationship the time that it needs. And of course, it has to be like reciprocal. It's not just you giving your everything. It's like it has to go both ways. And so from what I see is that a lot of people feel like it's just not worth the time to do that. It's not worth the time to put time into people because people are very, people can be shifty. People get busy, stuff gets finicky, and then people get older, start having children. They start having less time for that stuff, and yeah, it's just a lot to take in. But it's just a little bit, it's a little sad to see it because there's so much potential in every single person. And and sometimes you can learn a lot from somebody who you only spend like a few months with or someone you spend 5 years with. And so what I feel like is happening is that because people are stuck on like social media all the time, like you see stuff like, oh, person lives a good life, whatever, or you hear the godforsaken phrase of, I don't need nobody. And then you go around and you say, I'm so sad for everybody. And then, I mean, sorry, not many people will get that reference. But it's kind of like when you're fed a certain message for so long, you end up like believing it. When the truth is like, you kind of need people. Unfortunately for everybody, you kind of need people because even if you're alone by yourself, there are people who are contributing to your life right now, okay? Your plumbing system, I'm not your plumber. Someone got to go into the sewer and fix that. Your lights, someone's at the power plant trying to make sure that all the lights are working properly, all the electricity is flowing. And I don't know, even the person who's like your food, listen, someone's got to grow the bread, the wheat, all that stuff. It's got to be made by somebody. So humans are interconnected in one way or another, whether you want to admit it or not. But now what you have to do is that you have to take your skill set and be like, how could I use my skill set to interconnect with somebody else, okay? Indirectly or directly, but in this case, we're more focused on the direct aspect. And so when you approach relationships with like friendships, whatever not, you just have to remember that you need to always be prepared for ups and downs, peaks and valleys. You're going to have some great times. You're going to have some arguments. You're going to have some bad times. But the point is that you have to be willing to invest in said person. And of course, I know sometimes there's not a lot of opportunities to meet people. I understand all of that. But, at the end of the day, you want to be able to at least say that you tried. And so even like little things that you should like pick up, like, I don't know, checking in on people, that can be very helpful. Believe me. Now, of course, depending on the length of time, it might get more awkward, like really awkward, but you see what I mean? So you have to take into account like the little things that come into life. So yeah, listen, man, there's a lot of great people you'll meet and there's a lot of bad people, but that's kind of how life is, you take some good, you take some bad, but hey, why we live honestly is for other people, in my opinion, because let me tell you, being by yourself, being by yourself is miserable. And the way that the world is set up right now, you need somebody else. Okay, they make it so hard for you to do anything by yourself. So why not find a way to make another person in that? You know what I mean? So the big question you're probably wondering is that, like, if you really resonate with this whole archetype, you're asking yourself, what can I do about my situation? Well, good thing for you is that there is something you can do about it, and it's actually pretty simple for the most part. But it might take you some time to get it down. But you have to look at what you can do first before you look at what I should or what I don't know or I don't know what to do. It's like, what can you do? So can you walk? Okay. If you can walk, then you can go outside and go explore. If you can talk properly, then you can actually go and talk to people. And the more that you slowly start integrating yourself into the world using what you can do, you can eventually go and expand that. So instead of walking to your park, you can go walk to a convention or something and meet many different people. Go in a place of many different people. Say you learn how to talk properly, start with close friends, talk to them, and then maybe you'll eventually start being able to talk to other people. Or go to find a job or something where you can interact with people. You get the point. So when you know what you're capable of pushing it to the next level. That's what I want you guys to take away. Because even if you believe you don't have a skill that you can use, if you believe you don't have a skill that is manageable, believe me, there is never a shortage of like any kind of skill. Trust me. I mean, I know there's fields that's high demand, like, engineers and doctor stuff, always in high demand, stuff like that. But point is, there's stuff that you are capable of that no one else can really copy. They may be able to do it like you can, but they can't do it as good as you can. You know what I mean? Copies are just cheap imitations. And so maybe you're really good at, I don't know, building stuff. Go start a summer project. Maybe you might find other builders you can talk to. Or maybe you're a good programmer. Make some passion projects. Give it a shot. It never hurts. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I mean. Like, you have to start of what you can do. Because once you know what you can do, you will be ready for any kind of challenge. And that's what it is. And also, to know what you can do, you also have to sit yourself down and be honest with yourself, okay? If you are, I don't know, if you're a little overweight, maybe you got to lose some weight to start being able to move around a bit more and be healthier. Same thing if it goes the other way around. If you're underweight, maybe you got to put on some weight to do some other stuff. Or maybe you're not as academic as you want to be. You got to sit down and study, my dude. You have to study. Or maybe you want to start a business. Well, you got to go get the financials to start the business. So maybe you got to take a little 9 to 5 and save up some money on the side. Then you can start your business. So every single big project always starts with something very small, a very small change. And it's the little changes that will always add up. And once you get those habits into you, then you can be what you want to be. And of course, you don't have to chase stuff like riches. You just want to chase some stability. Whatever it is you got to do. It always starts at home, and it always starts with something very small that you got to tweak. And so really what I want you guys to take away from this is that there is no situation that you can't change. You can think about what happened in the past all you want, but the past is the past. You have to look at what you can change now, and it's never too late to change anything that you do. So don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't change your future at the moment. Hell, even if you're 60, you can still start something. Okay? There's no shortage of time to start anything. You may not finish it, but you can always go back and start over again whenever you want to. So just take that in. So if you feel like it's too late for you, trust me, it is not. Okay? And the more you work at something, the more you're going to improve at it, and eventually someone's going to notice your talents. Or hell, your talents are going to bring you something even better than whatever it was beforehand. And especially when it comes to something like loneliness, you have to accept it, and then you have to work, not against it, but you have to work with it to understand, how do I prevent myself from being in this situation that I'm in from now. So I'm urging you to take the steps that you need in order to be the person that you want to be. So in other words, build a life worth living, okay? Of course, it's not easy. Nobody said it was, but as long as you take those first few steps, that's really what matters the most. A little bit long-winded at the end, which is not my intention, but I just goes to show you guys that I'm actually very interested in topics like these ones, just because there is so much to it, and there's so much that you can learn from it, and it's the fact that, especially now, this is becoming more and more common, so we have to figure out, we need more and more how to deal with it. And so what I really hope you guys take away is that, listen, there's nothing that you're not capable of, and there's stuff you can always do to improve your life. And that's really what the message is at the end of the day. So So if you really resonate with this archetype, I hope you look into the various tools that you have so you can become less like that. I'm also going to link the video that I used in the description below. I recommend you watch it. It's 45 minutes long, but you don't have to watch it all in one sitting. It's a lot to take in. So yeah, if you came here, then you already took the first step. You know what I mean? You took the right step, if you get what I mean. But anyways, if that is all we have for today. So if you like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow my socials down in the description below. And maybe we'll tackle another archetype in the future, since you guys like this so much. Anyways, that's enough for me. Ciao!